Hi, this is Dean Butler. You're listening to TV Confidential.
Ed Robertson with a reminder that we'll play part 2 of our conversation with Lawrence Luckinbill beginning at the top of the hour. Stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we'll round out our first hour by playing part 2 of a conversation that originally aired in August 2016 with Steve Bender. Steve Bender, the Emmy Award-winning producer and director of such iconic specials as Lucy in London, The Tammy Show, and Elvis, the 1968 comeback special. Steve Bender is also the co-author, along with Mary Beth Leidman, of Fade Up 26, The Movers and Shakers of Variety Television, an oral history of variety shows that not only shows how the genre itself is far more diverse than we might otherwise think, but includes commentary from more than 24 award-winning variety show producers and directors. Fade Up 26, The Movers and Shakers of Variety Television, is available on Amazon.com and wherever books are sold online. Another show that you're very proud of, we've mentioned it a couple of times in passing, is the special with Petula Clark you produced that featured Harry Belafonte as the guest star. I understand, Steve, that almost never happened.
It almost never did. I had decided previous to doing that special, and I started with Leslie Uggams, who was a big star on television in the Mitch Miller early series where they had a bouncing ball and you could sing along at home. Mm-hmm. It was probably the first interactive show where you could sing along with the singers that were on the show.
I remember that.
And Leslie Uggams was one of the stars of that. And when I met Leslie, I was directing Hullabaloo, and she was starring on Broadway in a show called Hallelujah Baby. So I did manage to sell a special with her to NBC, and I changed the title to Hallelujah Leslie. And I wanted to do a special that if Leslie got sick or she dropped out after we created the show, nobody else could do it. It would be a total disaster and never air. I didn't want to do a show for an artist that if they dropped out, somebody else could replace them or come in and take their place, etc. I wanted to make a custom suit or dress for the star that nobody else could wear. And I started out with Leslie. I used my team, that some of the people I had met on Hullabaloo, some of the crew that I had used when I worked with Steve and so forth. And it turned out to be relatively successful. Everybody was very happy with it, I think, in those days. Bones at the same time was producing Leslie for Ahmet Ertegun and Atlantic Records. And then when we finished that, I got a call from my agent saying that they had a crisis on their hand, that Plymouth Cars was doing a special with Nancy Sinatra, and they had sold it to the network. But the problem is that Nancy decided to go with a sponsor who paid more money for her special. I think it was Royal Crown Cola or somebody. And therefore, they wanted to replace her with Petula Clark, but they weren't sure the sponsor would buy in. But they brought Petula to America. She lived in Megève, Switzerland, and France. So she came to the United States to take meetings to see if she could do the special. They assigned a producer-director to the show, and evidently they hit it off like oil and water. They just didn't make it, and she fled back to her home in Europe. And now they had a dilemma with no show and no star. And I got the call saying, could you go over to France and meet with her for lunch and talk her into coming back? So I had done the actual first recording of Petula in the United States when I was doing Hullabaloo. She was rushed over to the studio at NBC in New York to sing her hit record Downtown, even though there was no room in the show we were doing at the time, but they would basically bank her singing the song and put it into another Hullabaloo show, which they did. So when I went to Switzerland, I'll never forget that, because literally in 72 hours, I flew from Los Angeles to Paris, was driven to Switzerland, driven back to Paris, got on an airplane and came back to L.A., I think all in about 72 hours. So it was an amazing experience, but evidently it worked, and Petula decided to come back and work with me. And I had explained the kind of a special I wanted to do with her, though I wasn't sure exactly what it was. The special they had originally pitched her were a bunch of agents getting together and picking, this worked on this person's special, this worked on that person's special, so we'll put them all together and have Petula do it. So she was never happy with that idea anyway, or that format. So she liked the idea of creating an original show for herself. When I came back to America and met with my team, we kicked around who we going to get the guest star, and I had unfortunately directed the Danny Kaye series in Hollywood previous to that when I left Hullabaloo. Mm-hmm. And the ninth show was supposed to be Danny and Harry Belafonte. And I finished the eighth show, and Danny and I were not getting along. And as a result,
I've heard that about
Danny
Kaye.
decided not to pick up my my option, and I did not get to work with Belafonte. So I said, perfect opportunity, Petula Clark, Harry Belafonte. But I didn't realize, I didn't know Harry Belafonte. I called New York to talk to his secretary to see if I could get to his representative. I called around 7 o'clock at night, New York time, and lo and behold, who answers the telephone? Harry Belafonte. He had this much distinctive voice where you couldn't miss it.
Yeah.
Next thing I know, I'm stumbling and saying, Mr. Belafonte, my name is Steve Pister, and I'd like you to guest star on the Petula Clark special. And he told me it was impossible. He was making another movie or something, and thanks for the offer, but no thanks, and hung up the phone. About 20 minutes later, I get a message that Harry Belafonte's on the telephone, and I got on the phone, and he said, is Petula that blonde, blue-eyed lady from England who sings downtown? And I said, exactly. And he said, well, I've been thinking about it, and I think we might make a good combination, but I would like to say something important on the show. And as a result, what happened was, and I won't bore you, it's in the book, and you can read the story, but in reality, what really happened is it paved the way to breaking the color line, where for the first time in network, primetime television, variety television, a black person and a white person physically actually touched each other. Though you would think, as I did, that this is nothing and totally innocent, in 1968, before I did the Elvis special, it was a shot heard around the world.
Yeah.
Newsweek, Time Magazine, everybody publicized the touch. And it was so simple because during an emotional singing of a anti-war song, and you have to realize in 68 the Vietnam War was raging, Petula wrote this song called On the Paths of Glory, based on mothers and fathers sending their sons and daughters off to war where they get maimed or they get killed, and then a few years later, most people forget, and it's all covered up with flowers and or new buildings built over the spots and so forth. And it really had a major emotional impact, although it was not specifically referring to the Vietnam War. And as a result, we ended up, as we unfortunately do in real life, I ended up with a racist representative representing the sponsor in Detroit who insisted it be taken out of the show and not aired. He wanted to see them singing but not touching. And so I had shot it like film. I had shot about 5 or 6 takes without an audience. I had staged it where Petula was behind Belafonte, over his shoulder. I love the photography. And I decided the chemistry wasn't happening. So I chose on about the 6th or 7th take to say, Petula, forget my staging, forget my camera work. Just next time, come out on stage after Belafonte does his previous song, walk up alongside of him shoulder to shoulder and sing the song. And magically, which often does, something triggered the chemistry, something triggered the emotion. And I looked at Petula on the camera, and I could see tears coming out of her eyes. Belafonte looked at her, and there was an emotional response on his face. And the next thing you know, Petula reaches over and touches Harry on the forearm, and that's when all hell broke loose. And so immediately when I heard the sponsor said, it's never going to air because, we've got other takes where they're not touching, I ran down to the editing room at NBC and insisted the editor erase the other master tapes, so the only one left to use was the touch, and it turned out to be one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. And that the next thing that happened is I did Elvis Presley, had a black choreographer, a Puerto Rican choreographer, a United Nations cast of characters from all different races and religions and what have you, and nobody said a word, and not one negative fan mail saying, why did you do that, and so forth. So I was very proud of especially 1968 for my personal career.
As you should be. I mean, and it goes back to something, we talked about a little bit earlier. In that moment, you made the decision that you felt would be the best possible moment for that show, and you chose excellence versus, will the network like it, will the sponsor like it, which is one of the many discussions that you and your colleagues talk about in Fade Up 26, the difference between excellence and success. I mean, sometimes an excellent show is not always a commercially successful show, but because of the choices you made what turned out to be the right choice, and that's why we have this iconic moment. The other thing is, I think within a year, when you did the show with Harry Belafonte and Petula Clark, I think it was within a year of that Harry also did what turned out to be his iconic appearance on the Smothers Brothers show, and you and Mary Beth put the Smothers Brothers alongside Ed Sullivan as the two pioneers that really shaped the variety show format as we know it today.
Yeah, and I also believe in Thomas Wolfe's book, You Can't Go Home Again. So I think trying to clone the early days is impossible. You've got to bring something fresh and new to the table.
Steve Binder is the co-author, along with Mary Beth Leidman, of Fade Up 26, The Movers and Shakers of Variety Television, an oral history of variety television as told by 26 award-winning variety show producers and directors. Fade Up 26, The Movers and Shakers of Variety Television, available Amazon.com, wherever books are sold online. Stay with us, folks. We'll be right back. Play part 2 of our conversation with Lawrence Luckenbill when we come back for hour number 2 of TV Confidential. Please stay with us.
This portion of TV Confidential is brought to us by our friends at Front Porch Realty, the community of realtors in the Northern Bay area of California that is committed to finding the solution that is best for their clients. Whether you're a first-time home buyer or looking to sell or lease your property in Northern California, call Karen Strain at 415-886-7411 or visit frontporchrealtygroup.com for more information on how they can help you.
One more item. If you're starting a company, particularly one that is in an emerging market, you know that averting any sort of legal dispute is crucial to your business plan. Our friends at Tectonic Law offer an array of services that can help you avoid and preempt future litigation while also developing and protecting your intellectual property and intangible assets. Tectonic Law serves the needs of a host of emerging industries throughout California and beyond, including industrial designers, beverage makers, artists, farmers, retail stores, health practitioners, wellness experts, cosmetics manufacturers, nonprofit organizations, innovators in sustainable practices, and libraries. Go to tectoniclaw.com to learn more about how Tectonic Law can help your business thrive. tectoniclaw.com. Rock solid representation for groundbreaking industries.